Lucille Ball, the queen of comedy, the woman who made the entire world laugh, had, by any measure, achieved the impossible. At 77, she had built an entertainment empire from scratch, redefined what a woman could own, control, and create in Hollywood, and etched her face, that gloriously expressive, rubber-banded face, permanently into the soul of American culture. She had made hundreds of millions of people laugh until they cried, but very few people knew how much she herself had cried. Tragic is the childhood that shaped her. Heartbreaking is the marriage she fought to save for 2 decades and lost anyway. Devastating is the loneliness that settled in after the cameras went dark. And shocking is how close this woman, this icon, came to giving up before any of it began. The world knew Lucy Ricardo. Clumsy, scheming, irrepressible Lucy. But behind that legendary laughter lies a story not glamorous, but brutal. If Lucille Ball has ever made you laugh so hard you forgot your troubles, if her genius ever gave you a moment of pure, uncomplicated joy, hit like as a tribute to her extraordinary courage. This is the story of a girl abandoned by grief, dismissed by Hollywood, and underestimated by nearly everyone, who built the most beloved comedy empire in television history, and paid a price the world never fully saw. Lucille Desiree Ball was born on August 6, 1911, in Jamestown, New York, a small industrial city in the western corner of the state where winters were long and options were limited. From the very beginning, her life was marked not by celebration, but by loss. When Lucille was just 3 years old, her father, Henry Durrell Ball, died of typhoid fever in 1915. He was 28 years old, gone before she could form a real memory of him, gone before she could understand what it meant to lose him, that absence would shape everything. Her mother, Deed, remarried. The new stepfather, Edward Peterson, did not welcome Lucille and her brother Fred warmly. The children were sent to live with their paternal grandparents, Floribel and Fred Hunt, in Celeron, New York, a small lakeside town where Lucille would spend her formative years feeling, in the most fundamental way, unwanted. The beginning was not glamorous, but carved out of absence and displacement. A father gone, a mother remarried and distant, a child learning, very early, that the world did not automatically make room for her. Her grandfather, Fred Hunt, was the one bright constant, a socialist who believed passionately in the arts, in self-expression, in the radical idea that a girl from Jamestown had as much right to a stage as anyone. He took her to vaudeville shows. He encouraged her performing instincts. He laughed at her faces. When he died, she lost her foundation. At 15, Lucille enrolled in the John Murray Anderson School for the Dramatic Arts in New York City, the same school that was simultaneously training a young Bette Davis. The experience was, by Lucille's own account, humiliating. Her teachers told her she had no talent, that she was too shy, too stiff, that she should go home. She almost did. Instead, she stayed in New York and began working as a model for Hattie Carnegie, one of the most prestigious fashion houses in the city. It paid modestly. It kept her alive, but it was not the stage she dreamed of. Then, in 1927, at 15, she was involved with a man who was not good for her, a relationship she later described as one of the most damaging of her young life. She contracted rheumatoid arthritis in her legs so severely that she could barely walk. For nearly 2 years, she returned to Jamestown, largely bedridden, her dreams appearing to die in that small room. She recovered, slowly, painfully, and came back, not because it was easy, but because staying down was never something Lucille Ball could do for long. New York had dismissed her. Lucille Ball went to Hollywood instead. In 1933, at 21, she arrived in Los Angeles as a Goldwyn girl, one of many young women cast in the chorus of the Eddie Cantor musical Roman Scandals. She was paid $50 a week. She was one face among many, but she watched everything, absorbed everything, and she made people laugh, not on purpose, always, but because her physical timing was, even then, instinctively extraordinary. Throughout the mid-1930s, she ground through supporting roles at RKO Pictures, small parts, bit parts, forgettable parts. She was called a Technicolor Tessie, a pejorative referring to actresses who photographed well in color, but weren't considered serious talents. The industry saw decoration. Lucille saw opportunity. Then came 1940. She was cast opposite Henry Fonda in The Big Street, a dramatic role that revealed something no one in Hollywood had been looking for. This woman could act. Genuinely, deeply act. Henry Fonda later said she was the best actress he ever worked with. Hollywood still didn't know what to do with her. By 1948, after over 70 film appearances across 15 years, Lucille Ball remained a respected, but never quite celebrated actress. She was earning solid money. By the late 1940s, her film work generated salaries in the range of $100, zero per picture, but she was not a star in the way the era defined stars. Then came radio. Then came television. In 1948, she began appearing on the CBS radio program My Favorite Husband, playing a scatterbrained housewife opposite Richard Denning. Audiences adored her. CBS wanted to adapt it for television. Lucille agreed, on one condition. Her real-life husband, Cuban bandleader Desi Arnaz, would play her husband on screen. CBS refused. Audiences, they said, would never accept a Cuban man married to an American woman. The pairing was too unconventional. Lucille and Desi took the show on the road themselves, performing a live vaudeville act to prove the chemistry was real. They brought the footage back to CBS. CBS relented. I Love Lucy premiered on October 15, 1951. Within 6 months, it was the #1 show in America. At its peak, it was watched by 60 million viewers per episode, in a country of 150 million people. It was, statistically, the most watched program in television history at that time. The Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz production company, Desilu Productions, owned the show outright. This was unheard of. This was revolutionary. They were the first independent producers to own a major network television series. Suddenly, everything changed. By 1957, Desilu Productions had purchased the old RKO studio lot for $6.15 million, the same studio that had once dismissed Lucille as unimportant. She now owned it. She was the woman who bought the studio that didn't want her. Behind every laugh track, behind every pratfall and rubber-faced grimace and perfectly timed shriek, there was a woman living a life of considerable private pain. The marriage that couldn't be saved. Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz married on November 30, 1940, in Greenwich, Connecticut, a quick, almost impulsive ceremony that neither family fully celebrated. From the beginning, the relationship was combustible, passionate and destructive in equal measure. Desi was charismatic, magnetic, and chronically unfaithful. His affairs were an open secret in Hollywood, whispered about in studio corridors, while Lucille smiled into cameras and played the devoted wife America wanted her to be. What few people know is how desperately she wanted to save it. She endured the infidelities for years, not from weakness, but from love, from the belief that what they had built together, on screen and in business, was worth fighting for. She told friends she couldn't imagine her life without him. She told herself it would change. It is heartbreaking when the person who makes you laugh the most is also the person who breaks your heart the most completely. In 1944, she suffered a miscarriage. The loss was devastating and private. She had wanted a family desperately. The miscarriage was followed by 2 more failed pregnancies before she finally carried her daughter, Lucy Arnaz, to term, born July 17, 1951, and her son, Desi Arnaz Jr., born January 19, 1953. The world saw the perfect television family, but the truth was different. The marriage was fracturing behind every curtain call. On March 2, 1960, just 13 days after filming the final episode of the Lucidesi Comedy Hour, Lucille Ball filed for divorce from Desi Arnaz. She was 48 years old. The marriage that had produced the most successful show in television history. The marriage that had built an empire. The marriage she had sacrificed enormous pieces of herself to preserve. It was over. She later said, "The only thing I can laugh at now is myself. Desi and I were a perfect team. We were a terrible marriage, The communist accusation in 1953. At the absolute height of I Love Lucy's dominance, a shocking accusation nearly destroyed everything. Lucille Ball was called before the House Un-American Activities Committee, accused of being a registered communist, based on voter registration records from 1936 showing she had registered with the Communist Party. The accusation, if proven or even if merely believed, would have ended her career immediately. Hollywood was burning its own during McCarthyism. Careers evaporated overnight on less evidence than this. She testified in September 1953. She explained that she had registered only to please her grandfather Fred, the man who had loved her, the socialist who had encouraged her earliest dreams. She had never attended a meeting, never participated in any party activity. J. Edgar Hoover's FBI cleared her. But for weeks, the future of I Love Lucy and of Lucille Ball hung on the edge of a cliff. The morning after the story broke, Desi Arnaz walked on stage at the Desilu studio in front of their live audience and said, "The only thing red about Lucy is her hair, and even that's not legitimate." The audience laughed. They continued, but Lucille never forgot how fast the ground beneath her had shifted, how completely vulnerable she was, despite everything she had built. The years after the laughter after Desi, she remarried in 1961, comedian Gary Morton, a warm and devoted man who loved her genuinely and completely. The marriage was, by all accounts, stable and kind, but she never stopped loving Desi, not entirely, not in the place where first loves live permanently. Desi Arnaz died of lung cancer on December 2, 1986, in Del Mar, California. Lucille was 75. She had spoken to him shortly before his death. She was, those who knew her said, inconsolable in private, grieving not just the man, but every version of the life they might have had. The world saw an ex-wife, but the truth was different. She was mourning a partner who had been, in every meaningful way, the great love and great wound of her life simultaneously. At 77, Lucille Ball was still working. This is who she was. Work was not what she did. It was how she existed. She had sold Desilu Productions in 1967 to Gulf and Western for approximately $17 million, making her one of the most successful independent studio owners in Hollywood history. The studio she sold went on to become Paramount Television. She went on to form Lucille Ball Productions. Immediately after, because she could not stop. Her net worth in the final years of her life was estimated at approximately $40 million, a figure that represented not inherited wealth or luck, but 30 years of shrewd, relentless business decisions in an industry that had repeatedly told her she was not important enough to be taken seriously. She lived in her beloved home on Roxbury Drive in Beverly Hills, a neighborhood she had called home for decades, surrounded by friends, her children Lucy and Desi Jr., and her husband Gary, who remained faithfully by her side. She was still performing, still appearing, still making people laugh at 77 with the same instinctive genius she had at 1. In April 1989, she appeared at the Academy Awards with Bob Hope, radiant, sharp, funny. It was one of her final public appearances. 11 days later, on April 26, 1989, Lucille Ball died of an acute aortic aneurysm at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. She was 77 years old. The world went quiet for a moment, and then, because she would have wanted it that way, it laughed again, through tears. At 77, Lucille Ball still stands, as proof that rejection is not a verdict, that grief can be transformed into genius, and that a woman with enough will can build an empire out of every single thing the world said she couldn't do. From Jamestown, New York to the most iconic soundstage in Hollywood, from a bedridden teenager told her dreams were too large, to the woman who bought the studio that dismissed her, from heartbreak and loss and silence, to 60 million people laughing together every single week because of her. If this story touched your heart, leave a tribute in the comments below. Share a moment when Lucille Ball's laughter, that impossible, generous, world-stopping laughter, reminded you that joy, real joy, is always worth fighting for, because she fought for it every single day, and she gave it to all of us.